Haskins wants to invite you to his incredible adventure in search for cryptids, evidence, Bigfoot, Dogman, the black dog of Meriden. Many times since he was at young age, he's had encountered phenomena that cannot be explained. There's so much outdoors we don't know, so much we still don't comprehend. Outside is where we seek for these answers. Find it, it's about getting out there. Join us or check on YouTube for our previous episodes. Believe me, evidence is hidden on plain sight. CCIS is on the road, yeah.
Hello, everybody at CCIS. I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, something we've never done, but you probably see a lot on YouTube. We are going to compile some of our best reports and share them with you today. These are reports that came directly to CCIS. These are people that are from Connecticut, so shout out to that. And these are all things that was difficult for these people to show. When you have a cryptid sighting, it's not easy to share that with someone, and because you're afraid of, we talked about the culture of ridicule a lot. So you're afraid that a whole series of negative things are going to happen to you. We won't get into that. So we're going to share that with you today. We have a whole series of really outstanding reports. And what stands out to me is that it's not just Ganasqua, which is our Connecticut Bigfoot. It's not just that, but it encompasses the entire range of cryptids and some that aren't even documented. So I'm going to leave you with this before we get into the reports. Connecticut and everywhere is very bizarre. And the rangers and all of the authorities are very aware of their presence, and they don't want to scare you. And I'm not going to speculate beyond that. What I am going to do is get right into it. So we want to thank you for joining us and remind you to track your way to our subscribe button, like and subscribe. That really helps our channel as we're growing. And we're going to get right into it. The first one is from the podcast I did with the two bow hunters. And wow, was that informative. And it was informative on both sides of that equation, on our side and on the hunter's side. So let's get into that. These are bow hunters. The podcast was two gentlemen, and one got back to me. I talked a lot of stuff with these guys, and it was really, really interesting. They told me things that I was not aware of, like the forest. As they walk in, it's dark, so they want to be in their hunting spot or their hunting blind or their stand or whatever it is by the time the sun is rising. So they want to be there before sunrise. And I've kind of seen this myself. As they're walking into some of their hunting spots, the forest is flashing. And that's really something new. And I want to hear from the hunters more on this. So let's get into it. The hunter report. It was late in the evening during the recording of a podcast episode when one of the hosts, an avid hunter, shared a personal encounter that left us captivated. As the conversation delved into the mysterious, he confessed to an experience he'd had during a deer hunt back in 2012. It was sometime around Thanksgiving and the air was crisp with the promise of winter. He was out in a dense thicket, pushing deer towards his father when he stumbled across something that stopped him in his tracks, literally. It was an oblong footprint resembling a human's but stretched unnaturally large, embedded in the muddy bed of a creek. What made it more baffling was that it was just one print. The surrounding area was covered in dry leaves and dark rocks, large dark rocks, making it possible to see where the creature that made it might have gone. But the footprint wasn't the only strange thing he encountered that day. Earlier, as he navigated the dense brush, he had stumbled upon an unusual tree structure, something that almost looked like a makeshift hut or a hunting blind. It was eerily out of place in the middle of a private property he hunted on his entire life, a property he knew very well, like the back of his hand. He was certain no one else ever ventured into that secluded area. What I like about bow hunters is they're very familiar with tracks. They know they can look at a track and tell you if that's a wolf, coyote, a bear, raccoon, whatever. They know the tracks. So he calculated this footprint measured around 18 inches, and it was too oblong to be a bear print. It looked like a very wide and large human print, only that it appeared to have been left by something very heavy. Its placement puzzled him. One print in the mud and no clear sign of a second step, even across the creek bed, which was about 5 feet wide apart. He reasoned that whatever left it had to be massive, yet it managed to leave no further trace. The cold November weather added to the mystery, with trees stripped bare and dry leaves crunching underfoot. Usually, he explained, you're trudging through water in the woods in this time of the year, but finding an enormous print in that spot, that was outright strange. He snapped a photo of the print, which he shared with us, by the way. With his phone and decision, he said he almost didn't make because the whole moment felt surreal. Looking back, he admitted it wasn't just the size or location of the print that unsettled him. It was the fact that it shouldn't have been there at all. A lone hunter in the middle of nowhere, faced with evidence of something unexplained. What else could it be? A bear? A ganasqua? A Bigfoot? Massive man with very big feet? You be the judge. And that comes from Steve M., who calls himself Madman Mardic, and him and his buddy, you guys are the bomb. Thank you for that report. We want to encourage everyone to share their reports. So there it is. The guy from YouTube. We recently received a spine-chilling report from one of our YouTube followers who recounted an unforgettable encounter that took place in Torrington on Workman Avenue in the early 1990s. What started out as an ordinary evening quickly turned into a night he would never forget. It was late, and the house was quiet. When his wife approached him uneasy, she had heard strange noises coming from the backyard and asked him to check it out. Like any good husband, or even not so good husband, but like any husband. He's going to go. He was curious himself at that point, and he grabbed the flashlight and stepped into the pitch black yard ready to investigate. The backyard is vast and cloaked in darkness with no light, and he ventured to the center of that yard. The quiet, the still of the night was shattered by a sound that froze in place. A deep, guttural growl unlike anything he'd ever heard. It wasn't just loud, it was primal, ferocious, and terrifying. And you know it's big. You know, I've heard the sound myself, it's huge. He described later like a modern day saber-toothed tiger had come back to life. And we talk about this a lot. The saber-toothed tiger is classified as Smilodon. That was one badass American large cat. And, you know, if we say that a lot of these cryptids are left over from the Ice Age, that they just survived in small pockets of, I'm thinking Impeli and Bembe, you know, down in the Congo River, and maybe Tanystropheus in Lake Champlain. To us here at CCIS, it's one of the most plausible because we know a lot of animals have survived. They have stunted. So even if a Smilodon survived, it wouldn't be as big as it was back then, but it would still be one badass big cat with teeth so large it can't even stay in its jaw. Well, he stood there. He looked for the telltale glow of animal eyes, but saw nothing. Yet he could shake the feeling that something massive was only 20 to maybe 30 feet away, cloaked by the shadows. He felt it more than he saw, a towering presence, easily 9 feet tall or more, judging by the direction of the sun. For a full minute, he stood rooted to the spot, debated his next move. Finally, summoning his courage, he decided to take a single step forward, and that was brief. The moment his foot touched the ground, the creature growled again, louder, deeper, and even more menacing than before. He described it as the kind of sound that could make a bear think twice. I've seen bear running out of woods scared of things myself. It sounded like it could bite a bear in two, he said, and I'm not kidding. I've seen bear running scared. I know what he's talking about. Bear don't run from anything. Believe me, I walked up to a bear with a slice of pizza. They don't run, and I don't recommend it. It was the most evil, bone-chilling noise he'd ever heard, and it left no room for doubt. Whatever was out there wasn't just big, it was dangerous, huge, and monstrous. Realizing he was completely outmatched, he turned around and walked briskly. Okay, he thought, maybe run back into the house. When he slammed the door shut, he told his wife in no uncertain terms, I have no idea what's out there, but it can have the backyard. I've come into my house with that same look. And my partner looked at me. And no, you just know when somebody had an experience and they come in, as the term goes, white as a ghost. There's no questioning the veracity or the truth of that experience. That experience left him shaken. He emphasized just how massive and ferocious the creature sounded, far worse than any lion he'd ever heard. To this day, he has no explanation for what he encountered, but he has a strong suspicion. Dogman. And as he put it, this is an absolutely true story. Whether it was Dogman, something supernatural, or just the shadows playing tricks on him, one thing is certain. This follower's night in Torrington is a tale that will keep us all looking over our shoulder. Thank you, Wizard of Torrington. And that's right in our backyard. And we can tell you for a fact, I have no problem with this encounter being completely valid. There are very large animals out there. As we're going to get into when we get into the farmer's report, and that's coming up, that's a very elaborate, long report. That involves rangers, people from the DEP that just didn't want to be, they gave the information, thankfully. They did not want to be known. And of course, that doesn't matter to us anyway, because everybody is anonymous. Except for you, Richard Sear. This one's in two parts. This is the farmer's report. And this one holds a special place in CCIS hearts because it comes from Harry. He's a close friend, and he's a farmer in Bantam that owns a hay farm. And over the years, he and his employees have experienced some truly bizarre events that left them shivering. One night, while unwinding over a cold beer, the topic of Bigfoot and Dogman casually came up. That's when Harry decided to open up about his spine-chilling encounters, stories that still haunt him to this day. The first story took place one crisp evening as Harry and his neighbor relaxed in the backyard after a long rolling day in the farm. Harry was doing his usual rounds, checking the barns, while his friend tagged along. His wife Kathy interrupted them, striding over quickly with a mix of frustration and unease. On her way over, she heard a loud, menacing howl coming from the dark field separating the two properties. His wife is not easily spooked, she even admitting to muttering to the unseen creature, "Whatever you are, I'm too mad for this nonsense tonight," before marching straight past it. But her story had them both intrigued and maybe a little concerned. Naturally, he couldn't resist grabbing the flashlights and heading into the field to investigate for a good half hour. Him and his friend were wandering around the tall pines separating the properties, calling out and howling into the night. But aside from the crunch of leaves underfoot, the woods remained eerily silent. Eventually, Harry's wife gave up on the ghost hunt and returned to the house to set up dinner. Just as they were heading back, something stopped them in their tracks. A high-pitched howl, eerily human, cut through the silence. It sounded exactly like Harry's wife, except they could see her standing in the kitchen window from where they were. Something out there was mimicking her voice. Excitement and unease flooded them. They howled back a few more times, but whatever it was had gone silent. So they returned to the house, too unsettled to fully enjoy the rest of the evening. The next day, Kathy revealed something that sent chills down their spines. As she worked in the kitchen the previous night, she caught a glimpse of a tall, dark figure moving swiftly past the window. She was certain it wasn't the neighbors. She could hear their voices in the field the entire time. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, Harry returns from working the hay fields of Bantam, looking shaken and exhilarated. "I have to tell you what happened this afternoon," he said to me, breathless. "You won't think I'm crazy, right?" He explained that while cutting hay, he spotted something unusual across the field. At first, it seemed like a large animal moving toward him, but the closer it got, the more its shape defied explanation. It wasn't a deer or any animal native to the area. Nervous but curious, Harry managed to snap a quick photo with his phone before things took a terrifying turn. The creature, which had been walking on all fours, began to rise slowly and deliberately onto two legs. It stared straight at Harry, as if to say, "Watch closely." The sight left them frozen in fear. This thing was massive, with an unsettling humanoid shape. Harry, a man not easily scared, felt his blood run cold. He backed away as quickly as he could, all the while feeling its piercing gaze following him. Once he reached the safety of his tractor, he fled the field, unwilling to take any more chances. That evening, Harry spoke with a ranger friend of his that was retired about the encounter. To his shock, the ranger admitted that sightings of creatures like Dogman weren't uncommon in the area. Other farmers had reported similar encounters in the connected field, though details were often vague. Harry shared the photo with CCIS he took. It was a bit blurry, zoomed-in image of the creature. While the quality isn't great, the silhouette is unmistakably strange. So we enhanced the photo as much as possible to share with you, so you can judge for yourself what Harry encountered that day. Whatever it was, it left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Those fields hold secrets no one may fully understand, but one thing's for sure. You know, out there, CCIS will be keeping our eyes and cameras wide open. Find out what's out there. We have two more for you. These are really awesome. They're all awesome. Thank you. So we want to thank you for sharing your reports. That's what we're doing today. So we're sharing. We have others. We're sharing some that really exhibit some. All right. So thank you for your reports, and it's nice to finally get some of those out there for you. So if we have others, we'll be getting. We're going to eventually share all of them. One thing's for sure is that Connecticut has a lot of cryptids, and when we started this, no one really thought that was the case, other than the oddball thing. But it's much more common than I think a lot of people are aware of. That's why the BFRO comes here every year. All right, they do their thing and we do ours. Shout out to you guys. You know, we're all looking for the same thing. The more we have people out there, we can start to piece these things together. So we love them. The Mothman report. We received this incredible report from a fan who attended one of our recent lectures at the Connecticut Cryptids and UFO Awareness Convention. Although she didn't feel ready to approach us in person at the time, she later found us online and bravely shared her first-hand experience through social media. So we want to thank her for coming forward with this remarkable account, which struck us as particularly fascinating. It's our very first Mothman report from Connecticut. It was about 16 years ago, and something extraordinary happened to one of our viewers on a dark road in Kent, Connecticut. They didn't know it at the time, but they had come to face with what they now believe was the legendary Mothman, and this is their story. It was May of 2007 at night. The witness was on a somber trip, driving back home to Torrington from Danbury, after picking up the teenage daughter of a dear friend who had tragically passed away just days earlier. So the mood in the car was heavy, and her loss was recent. Her fiancé was behind the wheel. She was sitting in the passenger seat, and the girl was sitting in the back, holding her late father's dead cell phone. Battery was completely dead. As they're driving along the road near Kent Falls, something eerie happened. Out of nowhere, the dead cell phone rings. The witness turned around to look at the girl in the back seat with clear signs of confusion and disbelief written across her face. But what came next was even more shocking. As she turned back to face the road, a massive figure erupted from the woods on the left side of the car. It flew directly in front of the vehicle, illuminated briefly by the headlights before vanishing into the dark trees. The encounter lasted only seconds, but it was enough for them to get a good look at the creature. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The being was taller than a man. Its body longer than the width of their car, its wings were thin and membranous like something out of a nightmare, and its coarse, patchy hair only added to its unnatural appearance. The head was small, almost non-existent, with no visible neck, and it had glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce right through them. Its skin was a mottled brown with darker splotches adding to the grotesque appearance. At the time, they had no idea what they had seen. The car fell into an eerie silence as no one dared to speak about what they had just witnessed. They didn't even have the words to describe it. As if that weren't enough, just minutes later, another strange phenomena occurred. A glowing white orb, perfectly round, appeared in the middle of the road, hovered there for about 30 seconds, radiating an otherworldly light before it simply vanished without a trace. The events of that night were so unreal that they kept the story to themselves for years, convinced that no one would believe them. It wasn't until much later, after stumbling across the legend of Mothman, that everything clicked into place. That's what we saw, they realized. The creature from that fateful night matched the descriptions of Mothman almost perfectly. For those curious about the timeline, the viewer shared a poignant detail. The friend was a local musician. So, this happened about 16 years ago, and it's very sad. He's a very well-known musician, and so we're just not gonna list the name out of respect for the daughter and the surviving family and friends. But we looked at it, and the timeline adds up. It was a tragic loss, but this inexplicable sighting became forever entwined in their memory. To this day, they've never met anyone else in the area who's claimed to see Mothman, but they know what they experienced wasn't a dream or a figment of their imagination. The terrifying creature and the glowing orb remain vivid in their mind, an encounter they'll never forget. Is it possible Mothman had come to deliver a warning as the legends suggest, or was it something even stranger? Whatever the truth, that night in Kent is one they will carry with them forever. Thank you for that Mothman report. Okay. So this next and final report is almost identical to a report that we got from the Rorbeck Wildlife Management Area in Harwinton and Nodbrook and Simsbury. So when you hear this report, just keep in mind that there's one that's almost identical. So yeah, there was a report from Harwinton and one in Simsbury, and they're almost the same. The fisherman. Now it's the turn for Chad's report. A lifelong resident of Connecticut and a man who stumbled upon the mysterious and unexplainable right in his own backyard. Chad recently reached out to us to share not one but two encounters with what he suspects may be a cryptid, and that's cryptid with a D, with a cryptid lurking in the forests of Connecticut. So let's dive into his intriguing experiences. Encounter 1. The shadow at Stratton Brook. His story begins on a quiet May evening at Stratton Brook State Park in Simsbury, Connecticut. Chad spent the day trout fishing at the park's serene pond, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, he found himself alone, standing on the covered bridge spanning Stratton Brook. He began packing up his gear, enjoying the calm solitude of the evening, and that's when it happened. A blood-curdling howl pierced the silence of the forest, freezing him in place. At first, he dismissed it as a coyote, or maybe even a mountain lion, until he noticed movement near the pavilion past the bridge. A massive figure stepped out into view, was walking upright. It was not a bear, and it was far too tall to be any human. It shrouded in the glowing darkness. Its features were indistinguishable, but its presence was undeniable. Chad, in a mix of curiosity and bravery, called out to the figure, but it only turned around sharply and ran back into the woods, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. What was it? Chad had more questions than answered, not to mention a lingering sense of unease that up to this day still puzzles him. Chad's encounter number 2. The call taps at Nodbrook. If that first encounter sent shivers down Chad's spine, this second incident was even more unsettling for him. It was the evening of April 10th, 2020, around 8 p.m. at Nodbrook Wildlife Management Area in Avon, Connecticut. Chad was taking his usual stroll with his dog along a dirt path by the Farmington River, a route he had walked for nearly a decade without any issues. But that night was different. The woods felt eerily silent as the usual symphony of nature was replaced by an ominous stillness. Then the air turned acrid, filled with the unmistakable stench of sulfur. As Chad scanned the trail, he heard it, a loud tapping sound about 30 yards behind him. Summoning his courage, he struck a nearby tree stump with his cane 3 times. To his shock, the taps were answered. 3 loud knocks echoed back from further down the trail. The sulfuric stench grew stronger, and his dog, normally fearless, began barking, whimpering, and tugging at the leash. Well, that was enough for Chad. Grabbing his dog's leash tightly, he walked fast back to his car, his mind racing. He knew the area well and was familiar with the local wildlife. Bobcats, coyotes, and even black bears. But none of them, to his knowledge, could respond with tapping sounds. So the big question on his mind is, what did he encounter? Was it a Sasquatch? Was it another cryptid? That's cryptid with a D. It was definitely something entirely beyond his comprehension. Chad was a skeptic before these events, but now he's questioning everything he thought he knew. His hope is that these stories inspire deeper investigation into the mysterious lurkings in Connecticut's forests. So, CCIS team, are you ready to take on the challenge? The evidence may be out there, waiting for those brave enough to find it. So we thank you, Chad, for coming forward with your experiences, in the hopes that we'll see you someday in the woods to research this area further. All that's left to say is that evidence is out there, waiting for those who venture to find it. So thank you all for listening to the stories of the people that send us reports, and we have more, and we will get those to you, and we will also get out there, because that's what it's all about, getting out there. Thank you.